How can the power of who help with burnout prevention? That's what I want to talk to you about today. Burnout, as we know, is ever growing. When I myself reached burnout in 2013, I'd been working in a really toxic environment. But there was something else that was going on behind the scenes. And I've seen this in myself, in my first burnout and my second. My first burnout made me seriously ill. My second almost killed me. And I've been working with clients, working with leaders, boards, executive teams and HR professionals on this, I suppose, path to identity, right? This path to self, this path of discovering who, since about 2015. What I recognize in myself and what I've recognized with all of the clients that I've worked with on burnout since is that we really do lose our sense of self. What drives us to burnout can obviously be toxic workplaces. It can be toxic work environments. It can be high levels of chronic stress. Ultimately, the World Health Organization has defined burnout as chronic workplace stress. But what led me to that point that doesn't lead other people to that point? What leads people to burnout? Why isn't everybody at that point of burnout? And I think a lot of that comes back to this sense of self. Perfectionism plays a really, really huge part in edging us ever closer to burnout. Fear of judgment, fear of not being good enough, feeling like we constantly have things to prove, all edge us ever closer to burnout. And when we look at this fear of judgment, when we look at this perfectionism that we feel we have to keep going towards, when we look at what is driving this fear, a lot of it really is a lack of our sense of self. A lack of our sense of self. And so this lack of our personal identity, this lack of self-knowing, this lack of self-knowledge, putting on a mask and thinking that we have to be something else. We have to be less of who we are in order to try and fit. We have to be less of who we are in order to fit the boxes or to fit the frameworks or the models. We constantly feel like we have to be less than. And so we mask up. And in masking up, that takes time, that takes energy, that takes attention, it takes mental energy, it takes our physical energy. If we're constantly having to second guess, should we have said that? Should we be doing this? Should we be doing this? When we're constantly doing that second guessing, the energy that takes can add to our stress levels, because we're not just thinking about the thing in that moment, we're also thinking about what we can and can't say, how we need to present ourselves. We're thinking about what we need to prove, what we need to demonstrate, how we can take things to a different level. We're always second guessing what the environment is going to be like. We're playing over and over again in our head how conversations may or may not go. We're constantly overplaying how we will walk into a room, how will we be perceived when we walk into that room, how we want to be perceived as we exit the room. What do we want to be remembered for? What do we want to say? How are we going to get our point across? And all of that really comes from this sense of not really trusting who we are, feeling like we're not good enough, we're not worthy enough, we're not clever enough, we're not qualified enough, we're not educated enough. And I see this play out more and more and more with leaders, and the rise in burnout since 2020 and the gender burnout gap that has doubled since 2019. I think many of us now feel like we have to be less than we are. We're presenting in a way that isn't really us. And I hear all of my clients really talk about it. It's like, I just don't know who I am anymore. I don't recognize myself anymore. And I think a large part of that is true, but I think the real truth underneath that is we do know exactly who we are. We do know exactly who we need to be. We know exactly how we need to show up. And yet we're boxing it. We're keeping it hidden. We don't really feel safe in being ourselves in the world, because actually the world has told us that we need to think, act, be, look, work a certain way. And that inner knowing, the inner knowing part of us knows that something needs to change, knows that we need to be doing something differently, but we keep going. We keep going on this path of the shoulds. I should be happy doing this. I should be doing this. I should be showing up in this way. Again, that all takes energy. It takes our energy, our time and our attention. And it moves us in a very different path. Instead of showing up as our true self, our best self, instead of leading in the way that is absolutely right for us as leaders, we hide parts of us because we think that people may judge us, or that we may come across in a very, very different way. And actually, if there's anything that I have learned in all the years that I have been doing this work, it's that I would now much rather prefer to be judged on being my best self, my true self, than risking being judged or criticised for being less than I am, for not being my best self, or for trying to pretend to be something that I'm not. So now, as a leader, as a coach, as a speaker, as I stand up on stages, as I deliver workshops, I work with the boards and the leadership teams that I work with, there's a lot less fear now, because I know that I show up as myself. And I wonder how many of you could be showing up very differently if you just knew that you were showing up as yourself. How many of you are having to hide the parts that you are in your work or as you lead? How much time, energy, and attention is being stolen from you because you're having to focus your time, energy, attention on not being you, on feeling that you have to mask up and be something different? And when we're not using our time, energy, and attention on pretending to be something that we're not, or hiding something that we are, get all of that time, energy, and attention that's going into the wrong things is taking us one step closer to burnout. The gap between who we are and who we are pretending to be is the gap that burnout can fill. And the bigger that gap becomes, I believe in the 10 years or so that I've now been doing this work, that can be the difference between the level of our burnout, the severity of our burnout can be exacerbated the bigger the gap between who we are and who we show up as, or who we are and who we are pretending to be. So who are you? And how could really understanding deeply who you are at your core, the true you, the best you, the uniqueness of you, the you that only you can be, if you were to show up as that person, could you eliminate burnout? And I believe so. So start today by really doing some of that inner work. Who are you? Who are you not? Who are you showing up as? Who are you pretending to be? Who are you hiding behind the mask? If you can get clear on that, I believe that we can eliminate toxicity in the workplace. We can eliminate burnout, and it all starts with who. Start with who. Who are you? If this has been helpful, please do hit the subscribe button. And if you'd like additional resources, you can head over to kellyswingler.com. You'll find my blog, podcast, loads and loads of free resources over there to help you regain control of your busy life. And remember, it all starts with who. Who are you?